last CBS game before it. The game that people said, oh, well, I don't think fans are really going to tune out. Yeah, compared to the previous game, 980,000 fans decided not to watch.
Imagine spending thousands of dollars on jerseys, tickets, hotel rooms, and road trips to support a team you fell in love with, and then the head coach of that team looks directly at you and tells you that you were never really welcome. Not in a private moment, not in a leaked text message, out loud, on the record, to the paying customers who spent the last year building the financial foundation this entire league now stands on. That's exactly what just happened with the Indiana Fever. And the fallout isn't coming, it's already here. It's already catastrophic. And unless someone with actual authority steps in within the next 72 hours, what Caitlin Clark spent 2 years building for women's basketball might not survive what her own coaching staff just did to it. This isn't a culture war story. This isn't about left versus right or who's allowed to have what opinion. This is about a professional sports franchise committing what might be the single most self-destructive act in the WNBA's history. And the most stunning part? Nobody in a position of power is saying a word about it. The silence coming from the Fever's front office right now is so loud it's deafening. And every hour that passes without a statement, without accountability, without anyone picking up the phone and making a decision, that silence is being read by millions of fans as an endorsement. So let's go through exactly what happened, what it means, and why the clock is ticking faster than most people realize. Before we even get to Stephanie White's comments, you need to understand something. The audience she just attacked has already proven they'll walk. This isn't speculation. This isn't a threat fans are throwing around on social media, hoping someone blinks. There's actual data, measurable, undeniable data that shows exactly what happens when this fan base decides their attention has value and takes it somewhere else. The Matrix and Rose show. That broadcast lost nearly 1 million viewers compared to the previous CBS game that aired before it. Not a slight dip, not a marginal decline that could be explained away by scheduling or competition. 980,000 fewer people. Almost 1 million human beings who had been watching WNBA basketball, who had been tuning in, buying in, caring, and then organized, decided enough was enough, and turned it off. And the people who said a boycott couldn't work, the people who said fans were just venting on the internet and would never actually follow through, those people were wrong. The numbers don't lie. A coordinated fan response removed nearly 1 million viewers from a single broadcast. That is a real, measurable consequence with real, measurable financial implications. So when people say the fan base that Stephanie White just insulted will simply move on and keep watching, they are ignoring the only relevant evidence we have. These fans have already shown what they're capable of, and that was before a head coach told them to their faces that they weren't welcome. The moment Stephanie White made her statement, the Indiana Fever's social media turned into a war zone. And here's what's important to understand about what that actually looked like, because it wasn't bots, it wasn't anonymous trolls hiding behind fake accounts throwing slurs around. It was people posting photos, jersey photos, ticket stubs from games they'd attended, hotel receipts from road trips they'd taken to Indianapolis specifically to watch this team play. Real people who spent real money, who rearranged their schedules and their budgets, who became genuine fans of women's basketball for the first time in their lives because of one player, and the coach just told them that their values disqualify them from fandom.
And your coach gave the middle finger to millions of new viewers and fans and merchandise buyers, etc., etc. And here's my issue. A lot of people will say, well, trade her out of Indianapolis. It's going to be this way with every damn team in this.
The phrase "fire Stephanie White" didn't appear under some posts. It appeared under every single one. Not a handful of angry replies that could be dismissed as a vocal minority. Every post, every video, every announcement. And one of those announcements was supposed to be one of the best moments of the Fever season. Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell, 3 starters, were named to the 2025 WNBA All-Star Game. 3 players from the same roster making the All-Star team is remarkable. That announcement should have been a pure celebration, a victory lap, a moment the franchise could point to and say, "Look what we've built." Instead, it landed directly in the middle of a PR disaster the Fever created entirely by themselves. The All-Star news got buried under the avalanche of fan outrage. 3 of the best players in the league got their moment overshadowed because their coach couldn't separate her personal politics from her professional responsibilities. Think about how absurd that is. You have arguably the most exciting player in women's basketball history. You have 2 of her teammates also making the All-Star game, and the story of the day isn't any of that. The story is a coach who told half of Indiana to get out. Here's where the business reality of this situation becomes almost impossible to overstate. 1 year ago, you could not get a ticket to an Indiana Fever game without paying a significant premium. Games were selling out. Local restaurants around Gainsbridge Fieldhouse were seeing revenue spikes on game nights that hadn't existed in a decade. The entire hospitality ecosystem surrounding that arena got a jolt of economic life that nobody in Indianapolis had seen coming. Hotels, bars, merchandise shops, all of it got a lift because one player brought a new audience through the door. An audience that hadn't been watching women's basketball before. An audience that learned the names of every player on the roster, that bought league pass subscriptions, that traveled hundreds of miles for away games, that became genuine fans of a sport they'd previously ignored. Now the Fever are giving away free merchandise to try to boost ticket sales. Let that sink in for a second. The same franchise that couldn't keep up with demand 12 months ago is now handing out free gear to get people in the building. That is not a coincidence. That is not bad luck or a difficult schedule or some external factor nobody could have predicted. That is the direct consequence of alienating the audience that created the demand in the first place. And it gets worse when you zoom out and look at what's actually riding on that audience staying engaged. The new collective bargaining agreement, the one that gave WNBA players the salary increases and improved travel conditions and better benefits they'd been fighting for, that happened because of the revenue Caitlin Clark generated. The media rights deal with ESPN, NBC, and Amazon that's worth billions over the next decade, that exists because network executives looked at the ratings Clark brought and decided that women's basketball was finally worth the investment. Every single financial breakthrough the WNBA has achieved in the last 18 months traces back directly to one player and the audience she brought with her. And Stephanie White just gave that audience the middle finger while 3 of her own players were being celebrated as all-stars. The corporate sponsors who signed deals to be associated with the Indiana Fever didn't sign up for this. They signed up to be associated with Caitlin Clark, the most marketable player in women's sports. They signed up for growth, for expanding audiences, for a brand that was finally moving in the right direction. They are now watching their names get dragged through the mud across every social media platform because a coach made a statement that nobody in the front office has bothered to address. Those sponsors are going to start asking questions, very uncomfortable questions, about whether their money is being spent wisely. And if those conversations start happening behind closed doors, the fallout from this week won't just be bad press, it'll be financial damage that compounds itself for years. To understand why this situation is as explosive as it is, you have to understand the specific nature of the audience Caitlin Clark brought to the WNBA. She's from the Midwest, she played at Iowa, she's straight, she's white, and she came from a college program that draws from a deeply conservative, deeply Christian part of the country. The audience that followed her into the pros skews more conservative, more religious, more traditionally Midwestern than the league's existing fan base. And for a league that had been desperately begging for mainstream attention for 2 decades, that should have been the best possible news. More fans, bigger tent, new revenue streams from a demographic that hadn't been engaging with women's basketball before. The correct response to that development was simple: celebrate it, protect it, build on it.
Instead, a significant portion of the existing league's culture decided to treat those new fans like something to be tolerated at best and excluded at worst. And what Stephanie White said out loud is something that a lot of people inside the WNBA's ecosystem have been communicating more quietly for months. The message has been consistent. If you came here because of Caitlin Clark, if you're from a conservative background, if you hold Christian values, if you voted a certain way, you are not who this league is for. You are not a real fan. Your money is welcome, but your presence, your values, your identity, those things are a problem. That's the message. And Stephanie White just said it where everyone could hear her. There's a term for what happens when an institution decides that certain customers are acceptable targets for its contempt. It's called losing the room, and the Indiana Fever have lost the room in a way that's going to be very difficult to recover from. Because the people in those seats weren't casual viewers who might drift back after a few weeks. They were the converted, the people who went from zero interest in women's basketball to full-on fans who built their schedules around game nights. Those people are the hardest to win back once you've told them they were never really welcome to begin with. One of the most telling details in this entire situation isn't what Stephanie White said about fans. It's what she's been willing to say and not say about the incidents involving her own star player on the court. Alyssa Thomas, a player for the Connecticut Sun, has been at the center of multiple on-court incidents involving Caitlin Clark. These weren't ambiguous moments, they were documented. They were flagged by analysts. They generated significant conversation about whether Clark was being targeted in ways that the league wasn't adequately addressing. Stephanie White's response? She publicly defended Alyssa Thomas. She went on record supporting the player who'd been involved in those incidents, and at no point, not once, did she defend Caitlin Clark with anything close to that same energy. The coach of the Indiana Fever has been more publicly protective of a player from a rival team than she has been of the player who is single-handedly responsible for the Fever's entire financial turnaround. That tells you everything you need to know about the dynamic inside that organization. And Clark's fans have noticed. They've been tracking it. Every time a rival player did something that didn't get adequately addressed, every time White stayed quiet when her own player needed public backing, it went into the mental ledger that fans keep when they're deciding whether an organization deserves their loyalty. Now there's a genuine fear circulating among Clark's supporters that she's going to be pressured into releasing a statement defending Alyssa Thomas, or at minimum, downplaying the seriousness of what's happened. A carefully worded PR response about unity and moving forward and keeping the focus on basketball. The kind of statement that's clearly been written by a communications team trying to keep a player employable inside a league that hasn't exactly made her feel protected. And if that happens, if Caitlin Clark is maneuvered into publicly siding against the fans who built her profile, who showed up for her when the league wasn't celebrating her, who organized boycotts on her behalf, that's when the real damage happens. Not an organized campaign, not a structured boycott with hashtags and talking points, just millions of people quietly, individually deciding they're done, closing the app, canceling the subscription, moving on. That kind of disengagement doesn't make headlines, but it absolutely shows up in ratings and revenue, and it doesn't come back. Christine Brennan is one of the most respected voices in women's sports journalism. She's been covering the WNBA since the league's first season. She has spent her career advocating for women's athletics, defending the league during its leanest years, making the case that women's basketball deserved the same investment and attention as any other professional sport. And even she looked at what's happening right now with the Indiana Fever and called it the defining image of the WNBA at this moment. Not a highlight, not a breakthrough moment, not 3 all-stars from the same roster. The defining image is a coach giving the middle finger, not metaphorically, literally. That image is the one circulating, while the league she's supposed to be representing stays completely silent about it.
That's the brand right now. That is what the Indiana Fever, and by extension the entire WNBA, looks like to the casual sports fan scrolling through their feed today. And the league has chosen not to respond.
Kathy Engelbert, the WNBA commissioner, hasn't issued a statement. The league office hasn't fined anyone, hasn't suspended anyone, hasn't even suggested in passing that telling your paying customers they aren't welcome might be problematic from a business standpoint. The Fever's official social accounts are posting hype videos and highlight reels as though nothing happened, while the comments sections underneath those posts continue to burn. Every passing hour without a response is a decision. The front office is choosing silence, and that choice is being interpreted loudly and clearly by the fan base as confirmation that this is the league's actual position, that they agree, that they're fine with it, that the people Stephanie White told to leave should, in fact, leave. Herb Simon, the team's owner, has a very simple decision in front of him, a decision that in any other professional sports league would have already been made. If a Pacers coach, the NBA team Simon also owns, went on record telling half of Indiana that their values made them unwelcome as fans, that coach would have been relieved of their duties before the press conference ended. Security would have been called. Statements would have been drafted. Because in professional sports, there is one unforgivable sin above all others. You can have whatever politics you want. You can advocate for whatever causes you believe in, but the moment you tell ticket-buying customers that their religion or their voting record or their background makes them unwelcome, you have ended your own career. That's the rule. It applies everywhere in sports except, apparently, here. Christy Sides, the coach the Indiana Fever replaced when they brought in Stephanie White, never did this. She had real problems as a coach. The offense was stagnant, the rotations were questioned constantly, fans wanted her gone, but she never walked up to the fan base and told them they didn't belong. She never made a paying customer feel like their values were being graded on a scale that determined whether they were allowed to cheer. She did her job, imperfectly, yes, but she did it without torching the goodwill that was accumulating around the franchise. And now, in one of the most remarkable reversals in recent sports history, fans are looking back at the Christy Sides era with something approaching nostalgia. People who were loudly calling for her job 3 months ago are now saying, "Bring her back." When a fan base starts romanticizing a coach they spent a year wanting fired, you haven't just lost the room, you've created a situation where the baseline of "didn't actively alienate us" looks like competent leadership by comparison. The Fever have a promotional event coming up. They have season ticket renewals to process. They have corporate partnerships that are currently watching their brand association get shredded across every platform where their target demographic spends time. Every sponsor that came to this league riding the wave of Clark's momentum is now doing a very quiet calculation about whether the association is still worth it. And the window for addressing this is closing fast. The fans who are currently angry can still be talked back. The sponsors who are currently uncomfortable can still be reassured. The narrative can still be redirected. But every hour the front office spends posting hype videos instead of making a decision, that window gets smaller. The longer this goes without accountability, the more permanent the damage becomes. Because here's what's actually on the line beyond the Fever season ticket numbers. The entire premise of the WNBA's new media deal, the billions of dollars ESPN and NBC and Amazon committed to the league, was built on the assumption that the audience Caitlin Clark brought would keep watching, that those 980,000 people who tuned in last year would be there next year and the year after that. If they're not, those projections don't hold. The ratings that convinced networks to pay at that level evaporate, and a league that was finally, after 25 years, on the verge of real financial sustainability goes right back to being a product that exists only because the NBA is willing to subsidize it. Stephanie White put all of that at risk, not because of what she believes, not because of her lifestyle or her politics or her identity, because she walked into a professional setting and attacked the customer base. That's organizational malpractice. That's a leadership failure at every level of the franchise. And the Indiana Fever have roughly 72 hours to decide whether they're a real professional sports organization that understands how business works, or whether they're willing to let one coach's inability to separate her personal views from her professional role torch everything that Caitlin Clark built. The fans aren't bluffing. They've already proven they'll leave. The only question left is whether anyone in that building cares enough to stop them.
And right now, the silence suggests they might not. Drop your answer in the comments. Are you still watching Fever Games after this, or is this the line for you? And if you think what just happened was a fireable offense, you already know what to do.